Hello guys and welcome to Whiskey Wars. I hope you're all doing well, and today we've got two Laphroaigs, two entry-level Laphroaigs in their core lineup. The Laphroaig 10, the Classic, and the Select, which is a non-age statement. Both bottled at 40%, both affordable, and the Laphroaig Select is bottled in a mixture of ex-bourbon and sherry casks, being PX, and I believe also Oloroso sherry, so perhaps we'll get a number of different sherried notes on this whiskey. As you can probably tell, my Laphroaig 10 is almost ended. It's almost run out, and I've had it quite a while. But it's a really good whiskey, and you can see why it's so popular. I will say though, I think due to the little quantity in the bottle and the age I've had the bottle, a lot of its potency has come down a little bit. As you would expect from the Laphroaig 10, there's a lot of brine initially and a lot of peat. A lot of medicinal characteristics come in. But mainly you're looking coastal, a lot of seaweed, salt, brine. Laphroaig 10 is one of those whiskies that when I have it, I always think of a wet, damp forest. You think of pine trees in heavy rain, soil. It's an exceptional whiskey. One of my favourites, one of my all-time favourites. Onto the Select. Very interesting. Unique actually, because I have all of the core lineup of Laphroaig, and what the Select does differently is it brings more of a bourbon element to the drink, and what I mean by that is it adds caramels, it adds butterscotch, it adds fudge-like characteristics to the whiskey. It's also more subtle, more subdued than the Laphroaig 10, but I would say 60% of its flavour is classic Laphroaig 10, with a little bit more water to round off the edges and make it a bit more subtle, a bit more subdued. It's not as potent, it's not as spiky as the Laphroaig 10, but it's also got 20% caramel, 20% butterscotch, and it's like a dessert, like Laphroaig. Think mainly creme brulee. That's actually one I'm going to stick with. Creme brulee on the Laphroaig Select, mixed with a subdued Laphroaig 10, and you've pretty much nailed onto the Select's profile there. I'm excited to try it. Two-thirds of that taste is classic Laphroaig 10, I should say. A little bit of those caramel notes, but less so than what was on the nose. A little bit more ash, a little bit more cigarettes. There's a chocolate bitterness, a bitter chocolate, like a high strength cacao, raw cacao nib on the end of that. That's really, really pleasant. Very interesting. Very different between the two as well. Being a non-age statement, I should also say that it doesn't taste young. It tastes quite similar to the 10, just with these extra additions. I'm starting to get citrus notes to the Select, which I don't get in other Laphroaigs. So it really is different to the rest of the lineup, and that's something you love to see. Lemons, maybe a touch of lime. It's almost getting herbal, but it's not quite there. There's less peat than the 10. And it's softer, a lot softer. I wouldn't say sweet, but you can tell there's more caramel, creme brulee, butterscotch notes added to it. Onto the 10. Incredible. Incredible. You can see why it's a classic. Sharp, bitter, salty, peaty, smoky. Everything you would expect. Wet logs, wet burnt logs, fallen trees, rotting vegetation, moss, damp moss, soil. It's one of my favourite whiskies for a reason, and it's just hard to beat. It's a classic Laphroaig 10, one of the all-time great whiskies. And we'll go back to the Select and see how it compares. Coming back off the 10, it's a lot sweeter. Not a sweet whiskey, but noticeably sweeter. That chocolate note is really interesting, because there's a significant chocolate note on the finish to this whiskey, which I also get in the Laphroaig lore. As for the PX and the Oloroso sherry casks that it's been aged in, I struggle to see too much influence going on, if I'm being honest. I have the Triple Wood Laphroaig, and that's far more sherried, far more sweet. This is sweeter than the 10, but it's, like I say, it's a butterscotch sweet, creme brulee sweet, not a sherried sweetness. There's little, very subtle, nuanced bits of sweetness in the Laphroaig Select that comes from the sherry cask, but it's by no means easy to find. Both of these can be found at great prices. The Laphroaig 10 can be found high 20s, namely £28 from when I researched it and when I bought it. The Laphroaig Select is actually cheaper, commonly found at £23 on offer in the UK, and for that money, it's just an exceptional whiskey. I would put this as one of the best bang for your buck whiskies out there on the market in the UK. £23 for that level of whiskey it's really something special. That being said, how can you, for £5 more, how can you go against one of the all-time great whiskies? So I have to give Laphroaig a lot of credit. Amazing value for money, and two very different whiskies as well. But I'm going to give the win today to my favourite of the two. Only slightly more complex, but more peaty, more of the notes I want to see in an Islay. Laphroaig 10.